Hey guys, we just had an absolutely awesome conversation with Dr. David Hindin. That's right, we just had our first doctor on the podcast. The man is a surgeon, a maker, and a storyteller. In fact, he has a popular YouTube channel.
What's up guys, I'm David Hindin, and if you're new to this channel, I'm a trauma surgeon and I usually make videos about technology and history and medicine. Today is going to be the first video in a new series teaching you everything you need to know about suturing. I'm going to try to turn this Altoid tin into something that could potentially save your life. I want to make the world's tiniest surgical survival kit.
David has multiple roles at Stanford University, including being on the faculty of the Biodesign program. There, they teach a philosophy that medical innovation is a process that can be learned, used, and perfected over time. And David demonstrates time and time again over the conversation that we have that you don't have to choose between some traditional profession and creativity. The two can work seamlessly, hand in hand. In fact, creativity can work with pretty much anything. So let's just dive in and get started. I can't wait to hear what you think. We are so excited to have Dr. David Hindin with us today to talk about creativity and the intersection between creativity, medicine, and life. He is a force to be reckoned with, and it is such a pleasure to have him here.
Thank you so much for having me. This is like such a great excuse to get to hang out virtually and chat and meet Adia and meet Andrew, and this is wonderful.
Honestly, when Latte said that we were going to have you on the show and he started describing your profession, your path, and how you guys met in Philly and you were about to go on this fellowship where you were going to merge being a doctor with everything with innovation and creativity, I was like, wait, what? Who is this person? You're so fascinating. And one of the things that that just keeps coming to mind when I'm looking at all of the work that you've done to boost creativity in the field of medicine, like on YouTube and on Instagram, is like, how did you come to be? Like, how did this happen? Does it, like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Were you interested in becoming a doctor and then realized that there wasn't enough creativity happening around you and you're like, no, wait, I'm more creative than this, I got to fix that? Or were you super creative and wanted to find something to apply it to?
Oh, I see. Well, I kind of have this deeply held belief that it's that when you say chicken or egg, like totally knocks on that door, because I think that everybody has this like need to be creative or get to like feed that creative part of their soul. And I think that need is like uniform with almost everyone, but we don't all sort of recognize it or give it the appreciation that it needs. And I think that, not to get too ahead of things, but I think that the reaction that I found from many doctors who like hear about what I'm doing is like, oh, like I wish I could do something like that. Like the much more common reaction is, I wouldn't want to say like jealousy, but it's this kind of like wistful, oh, like I've always wanted to do this and do that. And so, I think it's there at baseline for everyone. And I think I got really lucky finding like a cheat code to kind of bring those things together. But I don't think I'm unique in having these like creative hunger pangs, I guess is the way to put it. I think like many of us feel that and just haven't found like an avenue for it.
It's so fascinating because in the Northeast especially, people encourage you to choose a lane. It's not even encourage. It's almost a requirement that you choose a lane, right? So you go in a conversation with somebody who is a realtor and they'll say, that's what I am. I'm a realtor. They put that right on the top of their LinkedIn profile. And people get really confused when they say, and I also would turn.
Yeah.
It just becomes this very, very confusing thing. And you must have you come across that challenge in that explanation for folks as you move around the world, or do you find that a lot of people are very accepting of it?
I think it was, I come across surprise from people sometimes, or people that are more senior and sort of have been in the field longer react differently sometimes. Like I remember when I was in residency and I had gotten into biodesign, this was like, it was like my dream of dreams. Like if I could have picked like one lottery ticket to win, in residency, for career stuff, it would have been that, like a millionfold. But I remember there was this like very senior attending that I was on service with that month who kind of heard about it. And he made some comment to me like, well, like, I don't really see why you wouldn't just want to be operating as much as you can as soon as you're out of residency. And it was very much like, I could tell that he was feeling sorry for me and trying to like do the math at like how this, poor soul had kind of like fallen off the wagon and lost out in his, chances at life. So I'd say there are occasional people who don't get it, but I find that when you kind of share what you're doing and you're like excited about it, the more common reaction that I get is like, oh, cool, or I've always wanted to do this, or how did you get into that? I think the more common response is sort of interest and and sort of fascination with that.
For those who have not discovered that biodesign exists, what is biodesign?
That's exactly what I was going to ask. I was like, so everybody here, we do a lot with graphic design and user-centered design. I was like,
yes.
Wait, biodesign 101.
Yeah. So biodesign is a process that Stanford developed to basically codify their strategy for doing innovation in health technology. And like lots of stuff that comes out of Stanford, it sort of benefited from being under the roof as the D school, where they were at the time doing all sorts of really novel design thinking approaches. And at the time that biodesign was created, there were lots of folks at Stanford that were building technology that they're always building random stuff out here, but it was basically the brainchild of a couple people who said, look, what is wrong with innovation when it fails, and how can we sort of put together a way that captures doing innovation right? And their approach to doing innovation right, which blends with design thinking, is starting from a needs driven approach and really like understanding the need and going deeper and peeling back the layers of the onion until you get to an insight, and then using that as your rocket fuel to sort of push through the process. And so the biodesign framework has different steps in it, but it starts with like needs finding and needs validation. And the whole philosophy behind biodesign is that when you do that part properly and you really define your need, and then you pick a really effective need that has alignment of people with money that are all on the same page, that you're much less likely to fail when you finally are trying to make this thing go as a company. And that if you do it wrong and you say, oh, I've got this neat doodad, who might want to buy it, and you spin that out into a company, then you're much more likely to fail. So the very wordy response is that's sort of what the biodesign framework is. And they put together a textbook, they started a fellowship, and that textbook and framework is now used by dozens and dozens and dozens of programs around the US and now globally.
How did you like decide, at what point, or was there a moment where you're like, I'm going to merge my passion for medicine with biodesign? Was there a spark?
I guess the spark was probably when I heard that biodesign existed. I mean, like before I heard about that, there's just this kind of unhappy part of me that when you do every residency has like a different requirement in terms of the pack of training that you get, but for surgical residency in the US, you are required to get 5 years of some very specific training. And many places in the US will have 5+2 of research. And so when I was at Temple, I chose the +2 pathway. And unexpectedly, I found during those 2 years that I finally had breathing room. And so when I suddenly like had a little bit of free time, I started exploring different creative avenues that were interesting to me, like joining an orchestra because I play violin, like all sorts of stuff. But to answer your question, I started Googling. I had this idea that as an excuse, I would sort of, or like as a way to make it sort of professional, I would try to visit different places in the country that were doing creative stuff. And when I was Googling, and I pitched it to one of the faculty people, and he said, sure. He said, I'll be your sponsor, and this can be sort of like a review article about this. And when I was Googling sites to visit, then I discovered Biodesign, and when I discovered what it was and that it existed, that was like a light bulb moment where I was like, oh my God, this is the way that you can sort of bring creativity and that kind of spark of magic into this very like formal ho-hum medicine world, and have sort of an umbrella that gives it legitimacy. So it was just a happenstance, lucky discovery. But then once I heard about it, that sort of got the wheels turning.
That's beautiful. You're codifying so much of what was just accidentally happening for a lot of surgeons, where they would come up with ideas, and if they were really inspired, maybe they would find a path to market for a product or some tool that they had discovered. But it was more, it sounds like it was more happenstance before, or sheer force of will, as opposed to your method. I've got to say, I have a very similar background, not from a medicine perspective, but just that discovery that user-centered design existed.
Yeah.
It was this sudden revelation, and it hit like a bolt of lightning. Actually, I should say it like Doc Brown, like a bolt of lightning, right? It just hit so hard. And I was 25 when it happened, and I was really trying to figure out how my brain worked specifically, because I found that I was just constantly coming up with ideas, but not necessarily knowing how to connect the dots, and how to kind of make a career out of all these interests that were clear in my head, but it just didn't seem like there was a place for it. And so for me, that was the user-centered design. It's the Institute of Design at IIT in Chicago, the user-centered design program there, which was, it's interesting because that was before the D School existed. For Stanford, that was the Joint Program in Product Design, which sounds like this really fascinating. It's like you have a twin out there. Like the Joint Program in Design and Biodesign feel like they're really, really closely related.
I feel
that's
like
really cool.
both of you guys have this really interesting, I think actually a lot of creatives go through this, where you have all of these skills. You were talking about, you play violin, Latte's like, I have all these things that I can do, and I'm struggling with how exactly to put them together. And there are some people, like the two of you, who find a way to bridge it all and to bring all your interests together. And then a lot of people, I feel like, go through life with this pressure to ignore the things that they think might not bring them a lot of money, which a lot of times, the creativity, the innovation, or the stuff that when they bring it out, people who don't understand it just go, oh yeah, that's nice. So when you start to discover, you're like, okay, maybe I won't do that thing that brings me such happiness.
Oh,
what
thank you so
percentage
much.
of your time is spent on being a surgeon, on dealing, working on biodesign, and where that would take you in terms of new companies and innovation and new products and all that stuff? And then being a video producer, I'd also say you're a journalist as well. Storyteller. How would you say your percentages break down?
So I'm full-time VA, and then quarter full-time Stanford, and then my Stanford time is split in between weeks when I'm on call for the week. Like this coming week, I'll be on call from Monday through Sunday for trauma for the week, and then biodesign happens in the evenings throughout, I'd say maybe 2/3 of the year. It's the faculty fellowship that I help run, takes place sort of after the workday. So, I mean, I don't know if the breakdown, they always do it in percents. I don't know if it's 85 clinical, 15 other stuff, or 80-20 or 90-10. I find that the creativity stuff, the pure for me stuff that's YouTube is just whenever I can kind of shoehorn it in. If I have a light day, or if like I have vacation or something, sometimes I'll try to cram it in, filming when I have a couple hours of free time.
Okay, so you
That's
have to
impressive.
teach us how to make it seem like you're doing creativity every second. Like,
Absolutely.
Whoa. Your
I was
Instagram
gonna
and
say-
everything seems like that would take up a bigger chunk.
Oh, well, thank you. That makes me feel a lot better, actually. I feel a little raw about this because I've been kind of just feeling really down on myself lately, creatively.
We all have been there.
Because, yeah, what I thought you were going to say when you mentioned my channel is that why do you go so long between uploads, or why are they so sporadic? And I feel like in my heart, like I have these ideas that I feel like I'm almost there with, but when I stop back and look at the calendar, like this video that I'm working on now was an idea like a year ago, and I felt like I was getting going on it then. Feeling inspired is not the hard part, and it's just the nuts and bolts of like when do I make it happen. And it always feels like there has to be this special moment to film. Like I have to find a special day where the clouds have, divided, and, the sun shines through, and I suddenly have free time, and my little doggy is, at doggy daycare for the day, and like it's totally silent. And the reality is that I think probably all of the videos on my channel from the past couple of years were shot in these bursts, either at like 2 a.m. when I just turned on the light and filmed some stuff, or there's never really been a video that I filmed at like an ideal time. But I still can't break through that friction of finding a way to reliably create in all those gaps, and so that's an ongoing current struggle. I'll just say one quick life hack that I don't know if this counts as a hack, but I try to capture those things that inspire me when I see. So if it's on Instagram, I have a random folder that I save posts into, like same for YouTube. If I'm driving and have snippets for an idea, I have one of these Apple Watches where there's an app called Drafts, and I have a little widget on my screen, and so if I'm driving, I can just touch it and like talk into it, and then it pulls right into the phone later. So I think something that I find really useful, and I've heard other creatives echo this, is having a way to sort of capture and funnel in those snippets of ideas. Some people have a little notebook that they jot stuff down into, but some way to kind of quickly download it on the spot so that you have time later to kind of browse through it.
I would say for me, it's actually more, honestly, I find inspiration all the time. It's very easy to be inspired. I think the bigger challenge is to figure out, do I have time to work on X, Y, or Z thing? David, I've noticed on your YouTube channel, for instance, you have these projects that hit at very, very different levels. I love the Matchbox, the match inspiration.
Oh, thank you.
It's so great because you just pursued it. And it's, I'll just describe it very quickly for people. Basically, this was a little side project, I'd call it, for you, where you just said, there are times when I'm not inspired and I need a format to get inspired. And I'm going to make this little artifact, and I'm going to make this happen, and it's going to work out in XYZ ways. And it was fun to see, even as you were going through it, you kind of self-owning, saying, well, that didn't work. and I love that. And what I find is that with a lot of the projects that I have, it's the same thing where I have to kind of be careful to say, do I have time to do this, what seems like a little project? Or do I have time to take on this other much larger project? Or do I have to ratchet it back? And so it's more like I find inspiration all over the place, and yet I have to find times to just kind of say, no. No is probably the hardest part, is just saying, no, I really can't do this.
I feel like there's a lot that you find in your work and in talking with audiences that shows them how accessible creativity is and how important it is that they access it, like whatever parts of their body can get creative, and their mind and everything, that you use that creativity. And you kind of bring those ideas to the masses. For you, what is how would you define creativity? And I'm just so interested in hearing from you the power that you believe it has.
Oh, that's such a great question. That's a hard question.
Take your time. I feel like you're answering it all the time in your videos.
Oh, thank you.
You can just go over one of your past scripts.
I feel like I think about this often in terms of like what makes your little heart sing, right? And I feel like creativity is a big part of that. I think people who sort of squash their creative voice are sort of hiding a part of themselves that makes them unique. And so I think creativity is this kind of magic that, if you want to get really philosophical, is, maybe what makes us all human, and what makes us special. Maybe it's what separates us from robots, but it's this part of you that sort of combines all of your skills in these ways that are surprising and unexpected. And I think it's this kind of force that can be channeled towards all sorts of productive outputs. But I think it's this essence of all of us that kind of makes us special, makes us human.
And in your work, are you finding that people are able to access that? Is that something you can learn to access? Because I know there's you have the whole "you should be a doctor that daydreams," and the program at Stanford is helping doctors to access that creative side. Is it something that can be learned and taught and become a practice, and how?
Oh my gosh, 1000%. I mean, I'll just say that this is not like an area of academic research that I've done. And I know that there are many, many, many experts who sort of formally publish and research this. So this is just talking from experience here. But I think yes, in two ways. I think we talk about creativity as a muscle sometimes. You have to exercise, yada, yada, But I think what's actually going on is that we have to practice quieting the voice in our head that's our own naysayer, that like objects to everything. And we also are essentially practicing how to step into a flow state. And I think like when we talk about practicing creativity or working that muscle, I really believe it's just those two things together, that you are, doing the legwork of clearing out time and sort of, treating something as protected and special and has value and everything. But then when you're rolling up your sleeves and you're trying to like be creative, I think what you're really having to practice doing is silencing all those parts of you that's saying, but this isn't, silencing that, and then learning how to tap into this sort of focused concentration that is letting ideas bubble up, but isn't sort of getting distracted by other emails that you have to respond to tonight or something.
And what about on the technical side? Like medicine, like any field, there are skills that have to be learned. There are ways of working to be able to express. And so I'm very curious about how you actually learned how to do some of these things, like making a video. It sounds very basic, but making a video, setting up lighting, setting up a room. How did you figure this out? How did you actually get trained or train yourself on these methods?
So the way that I have learned the sort of specific, the nuts and bolts skills has been very wobbly, but I'll explain what that means. But I'm glad that it has been, because I think if someone wants to just get started and just immerse themselves in tutorial after tutorial after tutorial, they lose the chance to be inspired and get ideas, and they just learn, okay, this is what I have to buy, this is where I put it. And I think that's great for sort of something that's scripted, that's handed to you. You just want to look professional on camera. But all the sort of special stuff that goes into your style and your voice, and what your voice means in different scenarios, I think comes from immersing yourself in other people who are just doing the craft really well. And then when you see something that, so that's the first part. And the second part is sort of noticing your reaction and like, oh my gosh, that was really neat. Or I love how they did that. Or I love how that beat dropped as the door opened. Or I love how the light's hitting it. And then what happens is you then notice the thing, and then you try to learn how you do the thing. And so my pathway to sort of learning at my current skill level, whatever it is, with video and camera and gear, has been watching stuff for entertainment that inspires me, that I enjoy, and then going back and trying to find a tutorial to learn how to do it. So like if I'm on an airplane watching something on Netflix that I've downloaded, I usually have my phone out taking photographs of my iPad screen because like it doesn't let you screenshot Netflix, or like, I have like a folder on my computer of like hundreds and hundreds of shots that I've just paused the screen and taken a picture of, just because it starts like becomes like your own creative palette mentally. And so I think when you drive your learning that way, it sticks better. And also eventually you get there. I mean, you learn, shoot the dark side of your face, like the other side, have the camera, put the light here. And so you end up learning the nuts and bolts along the way also.
I love that description of it being a wobbly path, because I feel like it fits so well into what you're also describing about being able to tap into your creativity. And I was just like, my new quote mantra for the week will just be like, be wobbly. And just see what happens. And I'm always saying that too, like, let's just get out there and let's just see what happens when we try that thing, instead of trying to plan everything or learn everything from a tutorial or X, Y, and Z. Just like getting out there, taking in the inspiration. You got a crazy idea, see what happens, and going for it is kind of a way to start to access those parts of yourself that some people may have not been using for a while, or maybe trying to figure out how to use in new ways. And be wobbly. Which also, while you were talking, I was thinking about that application of creativity to a specific industry. And I know for me, when I was in college majoring in broadcast journalism, one of the requirements for the journalism school was that you had to double major. There had to be something that you were going to use that journalism for, or something that you could apply it to, or that you knew in depth that you could kind of merge the two together. And
that's so cool.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if I thought it was so cool initially. I was like, I got a double major. But I think now it makes sense. And then seeing what you've done with medicine and with design and that merge, it makes so much sense to me that creativity, the application of creativity to something. And our COO is always saying that if you look through history, one of the greatest ways to see human advancement is to look at design and how design has impacted every industry. There's no aspect of human life that hasn't been impacted by design. And so it just makes sense that those two should go together. And your understanding, it's sort of, you're very much in that line. You took that leap to harness the power of design in another passion that you had.
I'm trying to. I don't know that I know how to harness the power, but I'm a fan of the power, and yeah.
Yeah, it made me think about that. And then also like daydreaming. You talk a lot about daydreaming and wanting doctors to spend time daydreaming. Is that also for you we always end up having these conversations about the things that get you out of blocks? And of course it's like the sleeping philosophy. It's like, I got to take a shower, and then it all comes to me.
Same, the shower.
What are your tools? Is daydreaming one of them, or what's your stuff?
I think so. I think daydreaming is kind of I don't think of it as like a specific activity, but I feel like it's that kind of like softening of what you're like holding on to really tight with your brain, and just sort of letting your ideas wander. And I'm the same way. The shower is often the place where like an idea will come to me. And I bought these heavy duty waterproof Post-it notes that you can put in the shower wall. I've never actually used them. It's not like I have 100 great ideas in the shower. If I'm lucky, I'll have one, and then I'll write it down when I get out. But I feel like the reason why that works for so many of us is because when you shower, you kind of zone out. And I think that's, to me, daydreaming was kind of like a fun word, like a catch-all for sort of slipping into that state in a way that we all can relate to. Like most people outside the design world will kind of roll their eyes if you talk about slipping into a flow state, or maybe less so now with I'm blanking on who wrote the Act of Creativity, or the Creative Act, that new book.
I do not know this book. Oh my gosh.
Who's the guy that's the head of Def Jam?
Right.
Rick Rubin, or it's Rick Rubin, right?
Yeah, Rick Rubin. Yes, that's supposed to be an amazing book. Yeah.
Rick Rubin, the Creative Act way of it's really neat. But like anyone who knows that book is probably super comfortable with the word flow state. But I feel like most of the lay public that doesn't think of themselves as a creative person gets daydreaming. Like you use that phrase and like everyone kind of gets what it feels like. Yeah. I'm not sure if that's answering what you're thinking about, Adia.
No, I know. Well, I never thought of daydreaming that way as something that everybody can understand. So it's a really great word. Yeah, flow state. I feel like it's even got like a vibe to it. Like you got to be somebody who's like cool with flow. They're like, flow state, man. Like I feel like some people are like, oh, flow state, like you were saying. But daydreaming is something that everybody does and everybody can understand. And when you talk about accessing different audiences, why do you think it is that creativity and that power of creativity? I know at one point you said that without creativity, medicine can't advance. Why do you think that creativity gets overlooked by so many different industries and sectors when it has so much power, as you find out?
Oh, interesting. That is such a good question. I feel like I keep saying that after every question.
I'm like,
yeah.
I came with the questions today.
Yeah. I think medicine is so protocolized that like we talk about standard of care, and sort of standard in general is sort of captures this essence of like this thing, whatever it is you're talking about at the moment, has data behind it that shows that this is the best way that we're about to do something. If you don't do this, it better be because you're like extremely senior and have lots of experience and have thought of an exception. And so I think if you are using the word creativity in the context of medicine, there is a sense that you are not really practicing good medicine. I think surgery is one area where we think about problem solving, and that's sometimes a little bit different. But even in surgery, most of what we do has rules behind it, sort of standards. Maybe there's problem solving within an operation, but there's usually some consensus around what operation should be done, or if an operation should be done, given a specific condition. So I think on the surface, creativity sometimes feels like loosey-goosey in a way that medicine tries not to be.
That's a good point. I think that there are other aspects when it comes to business, maybe in general, maybe less so with medicine, though I think there are specific lanes where creativity is really accepted, in fact, encouraged, like R&D for a pharmaceutical company, or you name it, where creativity is really relied upon as the means, or experimentation, I should say. So very carefully organized hypotheses and tests, etc., to limp ahead and try to figure out something until you have that breakthrough. But interestingly enough, oftentimes that breakthrough is accidental. It's the process that got them there, but the actual final form of inspiration is a creative expression. And it really pole vaults things, right? It doesn't matter what you look at. For instance, Viagra was not intended for its purposes. It was a happy accident, so to speak. And so it really came through the process, but it was an accident. And I think the other thing to mention with that is that creativity in an organization oftentimes sounds risky. People don't like to take risks when they're looking for that next jump up in their role or their income, etc. It's too risky to do that when they can instead manage people or manage timelines or manage other things, as opposed to some other magical, spiritual flow state to get them there.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I sometimes work with companies on the other end, doing consulting, like biodesign consulting, and it's very different from the sort of pure biodesign where you're sort of going out in the world and finding needs, because when you work with a company, they don't have any, like, they're not asking you to help them like make a new product and throw out what they're asking you to sort of roll the process backwards and sort of do needs finding to find other segments that are underserved by their market. But you're right, like as soon as there are dollar signs and as soon as it's a bigger company, the sort of the barriers and sort of the fence around what is creative and sort of what the tolerance is for wild ideas gets very different, and it changes. And yeah.
Yeah, the statistics, it's amazing because I think they're old statistics now.
Yeah.
But when I was in grad school, so early 2000s, the statistic that was touted was a 4% success rate for an innovation, for a launch of an innovation.
Wow.
For a launch of I should say, a product or a service. Innovation is commercially successful, right?
Sure.
4% is that's not a good average. And so you can see why many entities would be very reluctant to try to put a lot of energy and effort into hiring a whole bunch of creatives. That might have been an old statistic, meaning that was 4% before user-centered design thinking had really become a powerful tool or powerful methodology. This was before the iPhone, for instance. And before design, the ROI of design was something that people were really paying attention to because they weren't convinced that design mattered. And so it's this really fascinating, David, you do a lot of videos where you're talking about the history of a scientific invention. If you look back at design around that time, around when biodesign was started, the statistics were not very good for the success rate of devices and solutions, et cetera. So it's not a big surprise that there would still be this assumption in the business world, in medicine, et cetera, that the creative process is a dangerous process. Whereas I think we know better, that it's actually a big solution and a way to really jump things up and really score a whole bunch of home runs.
Yeah, that totally. Yeah. Agree 100%.
So what's next for you in terms of where biodesign and that merging of creativity and profession goes, and also just with exploring your own creed, like what's next? Where's the world going?
Oh, well, I think the professional part of it, like what's next with biodesign is right now I'm sort of working with different cohorts each year to sort of train them in the process. And so what's next with that is really all the brilliant people that are coming through biodesign and learning how to do it.
It's growing a lot.
I'm sorry.
It's growing a lot. Are you seeing just like this constant?
I think it's growing a little bit. It's a popular enough offering that every year they've been filling their seats pretty well with folks. I'm starting to do some we call it needs finding at the beginning of I'm starting to do that on my own. So when I'm in the IC1 weeks, I've got this little notebook that I'm starting to jot down needs to start working the process on my own. And I think big picture for me, what's next is I'm still trying to figure out how to make these two things fit together. Like how to make the creative part of who I am that kind of makes me feel full and satisfied, how to give it enough legitimacy to fall under the umbrella of what I'm doing academically. And so right now, biodesign and this innovation role within the Department of Surgery are great. And YouTube is still the biggest playground, I think, for me in terms of my biggest outlet. And I'm working on some new videos of making stuff. I'm working on this video trying to turn hospital beeps into music, and all the noise that you have in a hospital. So things that are exciting to me and maybe variably exciting to the rest of the world, but make me happy enough that I'm okay sort of taking a chance, even if not many other people watch it.
I know that's
fantastic.
hard work, but I'm so happy that it's happening. Because while you guys have been talking, while we're all talking, I'm just thinking back to myself in high school. I feel like I ended up in a lot of conversations. My parents were creatives. I already knew I wanted to go into video and do that. And there were so many friends that I had who were creative. And at senior year, when it was time to apply to school, they were like, no, I feel like I need to become a lawyer, or no, I have to abandon this because I should be helping people at a nonprofit. And I would have all these arguments where I'm like, you can do both. And at the time, all I had was my mom would always say that you can make money doing anything that you're great at. And there's no reason why you need to be a starving artist or a starving creative, that you can make money with your passions. And And I very much believed that, but it wasn't really working to convince everyone else. But now to see where things are now with industries adapting and adopting, bringing creativity in and having creatives as part of their business, I just wish I had that to show them. I wish I had your YouTube page to be like, see, you don't have to abandon it. Like, keep going, bring it together. And I know it's a process of figuring out how it all fits together. But the fact that you're on that journey is something that my friends in high school, we would just love to have.
Oh, well, thank you.
And we still need it now. I think, as you were saying, you're in that spot now where you need that little bit of motivation. I just feel like when you are creative and you're taking these risks all the time with your ideas, sometimes you just need that person to lift you up and be like, yep, keep going.
It is so exciting to reconnect with you and just to have this conversation. Honestly, you're such a pleasure.
Thank you for taking the time to sit down with us and tell us all your thoughts.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This has been so special. This has been awesome.